What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Sorry, skipped a slide there for a second. Welcome to my channel. Going to be uploading for you guys today my Week 12 Top 25 and College Football Playoff Poll reaction. I know you just saw a little sneak peek there on the next slide that I'm showing you here in a little bit. But welcome to my Week 12 Top 25 College Football Playoff Poll reaction. We are so close to the end of the season. And let's see where my top 25 poll stands as of right now. We did have some big movers this week and a couple things out of my poll that may surprise you. But again, pretty similar to some of the bigger media polls that are out there right now. And I'll explain my reasoning once we get into it. Big thank you for watching this video. That's one way you can help support the channel. There are other ways, though. You can hit the subscribe button, like, comment, share. Anything you really do to interact with the channel helps support me. And let's dive on in. You just saw this slide at the beginning of the video for a little bit. This is my honorable mention list. Syracuse is still on there. In fact, we have a lot of teams from the ACC on here, Syracuse being one of them. Duke is a new addition. Wake Forest is still here. NC State did drop out of my poll. They are now on the honorable mention slot. You got Louisville on there as well, representing the ACC. Around the same area there as well, you have the Liberty Flames, who did drop out after that loss to UConn. Hey, props to UConn, huh? Getting bowl eligible. Jim Morris done a fantastic job, but Liberty did end up dropping out of the poll. A couple Big Ten teams on here in Illinois and Minnesota. Illinois dropped out of my poll from last week. You got Texas, who dropped out of the poll from last week there as well, although if I had a 26th spot, probably would end up going to the Texas Longhorns. You also have a couple teams out of the SEC in Mississippi State and South Carolina. And then you got Troy and UTSA, a couple other group of 5 teams still hanging around, waiting for their shot to get in. But who did make my top 25? We're here to find that out right now. Coming in at number 25 through 21, as you see, I have 4 new teams ranked in this part of my top 25, and they are all 25 through 22. So Oregon State, Oklahoma State, couple teams that are back in the polls. Both these teams have had tremendous seasons. Probably not really room for them to squeak into their respective conferences championship games. But hey, they have had phenomenal seasons nonetheless. Oregon State has risen above expectations. Oklahoma State might be hovering right around expectations, but after a couple disappointing performances, they got back on track last week. And they got a big one coming up this week with Bedlam. Going to be honest, I don't quite know who Oregon State has off the top of my head, although they do have the big game against Oregon coming up here in a couple of weeks. So still some important games left for those teams. My apologies. Coastal Carolina is here at 23, and Coastal Carolina is in a bit of an interesting spot because, yeah, I know Grayson McCall's out, but even with Grayson McCall being out, Coastal Carolina's played some really good football as of late, and they're in a little bit of a unique situation here because Virginia, the Cavaliers, actually just canceled their final home game due to the tragic and unfortunate events that unfolded on the campus of the University of Virginia earlier this week, which my thoughts and prayers go out to everyone involved with that situation, the campus, the families, the students, really everybody involved. But Coastal Carolina finds themselves in a unique situation where they won't have to play that game. So there's one less game down. I don't think they're going to give Coastal Carolina a win for it. If they do, I'd kind of be a little bit shocked. I'd imagine they'd end up ruling that game as a no contest type game. But Coastal Carolina has played well enough to earn a spot in the top 25, whether they end up playing 12 games or not this year. They may try to get a filler game in there, although I haven't seen anything that really suggests that's going to happen. Not that I've seen. At least Cincinnati's back in the poll here at number 22. This is big for the University of Cincinnati. Not only are they still alive to get to the American Championship game, they are still alive. It's a long shot, but they're still alive to end up being that highest-ranked Group of 5 champion and get a spot back in a New Year's Six bowl game, much like Cincinnati was last year as they made the college football playoff. Hey, got a big game coming up here in a couple of weeks against the University of Tulane. No shame in Cincinnati's 2 losses. You lost to UCF, and you lost there to, I believe it was Arkansas. Yes, it was Arkansas that very first week of the year. Look, Cincinnati, I think has played some great football under Luke Fickell this year. I can't wait to see how Cincinnati finishes out. And speaking of American Athletic, there's Tulane there at 21. They did drop 5 spots after their loss this past week. But again, teams that are down in the bottom portion of my top 25 are so close. They really are this close to each other. There's not a big point differential. If I were to put these teams on a neutral field, the gap between 25 and 16 might be 3 or 4 points, right? It really is that close. So again, it's tough to create top 25 down here. I got Cincinnati at 22, Tulane at 21. As I've mentioned, look, the Green Wave have played some really good football right now. Just couldn't quite make enough of a comeback effort to get past UCF. But hey, Tulane is going to be ready to go. They're still in the race, definitely still up there to get into the American Athletic Conference Championship game. But again, there is still that big looming game with the University of Cincinnati here in a couple of weeks. So the American Conference, that's going to be a conference race that not a lot of people maybe are going to be putting on their list. But it's a conference race that you're going to want to watch because it could be very interesting as we get into the home stretch here. Moving into my top 20. Now, I know I'm going to have to do some explaining for one of these teams. And I'll do it when I get there, which actually is in a little bit. But Florida State is up here to number 20. I like the way that Mike Norvell has put this team together. And Florida State has a very impressive win on the schedule right now, especially with the way that LSU has been playing. Florida State able to beat them in the season opening game this year. And if it weren't for a missed extra point, who knows? We could be talking about LSU being one of the surefire favorites to get into the college football playoff. Maybe we're talking about Florida State, not quite really back yet. Maybe they're not in the top 25 right now. But what a win that was for Florida State to kick off their year. And they've been pretty good ever since then. So the Seminoles going to continue to rise here in my poll as long as they keep winning football games. There is a big game, though, looming. Again, you have to go play. I believe they end up playing Louisiana and Florida are their last 2 games. I know the Florida game's here in a couple weeks, but I believe it's Louisiana that is that opponent this week, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be an interesting game for sure. But again, the big one looming with the Gators here in a couple of weeks. Now, this is where I know I'm going to have to do some explaining, right? Kansas State, even though of what they did to Baylor was outstanding, look, this is where I say that teams are so close in this little region right here, right? I do like Kansas State, and I like the way that the Wildcats are playing. But having them here at 19, I can't jump them over UCLA. I feel like UCLA is a better team. I feel like Notre Dame's a better team right now once they've gotten grooving. I feel like UCF is a better team right now. And look, no disrespect to Kansas State at all. I mean, there's no disrespect. And when they are flying, they're a really, really good team. And they're probably going to end up making the Big 12 championship game there as well. But again, this is just how razor thin the margins are. I can't put them above any of the teams that you see above them. I just don't feel like Kansas State would have the necessary pieces to be able to beat them. But you can't deny the body of work that Kansas State has there as well. So it's a really interesting conversation on what do you do with Kansas State, because they are sitting there with 3 losses, but those 3 losses are to some pretty good teams, right? You got a loss to Texas, you got a loss to Tulane, and you got a loss to undefeated TCU. So some really good losses on there. Kansas State is a very interesting topic when you're placing them into the top 25. Definitely should rise if they continue to win here in my poll. But just the way things worked out from last week, I do have them at number 19. I have UCLA here at number 18. They dropped 5 spots after their loss to the Arizona Wildcats, which may have effectively put them out of Pac-12 championship play. Very likely did that. Also knocked them out of being a dark horse in the college football playoff race. So, hey, that's a really disappointing loss for the UCLA Bruins, but Chip Kelly and company have done a fantastic job at getting this team back on the rails, and especially now going to join the Big Ten, or so it seems, here in a couple of years. UCLA is very much in the right position right now. It's going to be interesting to see how they look next year, but again, we're nowhere close to next year yet, right? We still got 2-3 more weeks for some of these teams left to go here before the postseason play starts. So I like the way that UCLA is playing. I like the way that Chip Kelly has this team getting organized right now. I think UCLA is going to be a solid team for the rest of the year. And look, it's a big week in the land of the Pac-12. UCLA's got to play USC this week. Ooh, that's going to be a very, very interesting game to watch. Can't wait to watch that one. Notre Dame is up here at number 17. They jump up 3 spots. My apologies, from where they were last week. Look, Notre Dame's start to the season was not optimal. They had a lead on Ohio State at halftime. They ended up blowing that in the next the next week they get upset by Marshall. They have a shaky performance against Cal. They have a loss to Stanford, who's not a great team out of the Pac-12 on that resume there as well. So Notre Dame is a team that really has struggled in the early going. But they found their footing here as of late, and they are rolling. Look, they have wins over Clemson. They still have to face a really good USC team. They have a win over North Carolina. They have a win. I'm sorry, I keep hitting my mic. They have a win over North Carolina. They have a win over BYU, and I know BYU has not lived up to expectations this year, but on a neutral field, that's still a pretty solid football team there. So Notre Dame, as of late, ever since that bye week, really, or especially here over the past month or so, they've really pulled it together and have gotten some really, really impressive wins. And they've done it in impressive fashion. So as of late, I know the season didn't start that well for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, but I like the way that this team is playing as of late. And I know you got to look at the entire body of work, which is why you can make a case why Kansas State is above Notre Dame, in which case you drop Notre Dame to maybe 19 and move UCLA and Kansas State up. Again, however you organize your top 25, really no big complaint from me, but I do have Notre Dame there at 17. I like the way that Marcus Freeman has this group playing now that we're starting to get into the nitty-gritty. And again, if USC were to be able to beat UCLA this week, Notre Dame could spoil their party the very next week. So, again, we'll talk about USC, but some really interesting games coming up for them as well. And then I got UCF all the way up to number 16. Listen, the UCF has a common theme throughout the past couple of years, right? Is that analysts and people like myself will underestimate this team coming into the year. And then when they come out and prove that they're really a big deal, it maybe catches some people off guard. Well, look, this UCF team is the real deal. This is the team that has already beaten Cincinnati. They just beat Tulane. They've been able to squeak by Memphis. They do, however, have an upset loss to East Carolina, but we've seen what East Carolina is capable of this year, as they almost pulled off an upset against, I believe it was NC State, the first game beginning of the year. Look, UCF, very, very good team. Right now, that is my front runner to be the highest ranked group of 5 team and the highest ranked group of 5 champion to go make a New Year's 6 bowl game. They are my favorites right now. Like the way that Gus Malzahn has this team playing. In fact, I love the way Gus Malzahn has this team playing. UCF, to me, deserving almost of a top 15 spot, but not quite. And I think the top 15 teams right now are pretty clear cut and dry. As we do move now into the top 15. Again, you can make an argument why Kansas State is up here, but this is where I got Ole Miss here at number 15. For Ole Miss, it's a little bit of an interesting scenario right now. Look, they played Alabama really, really close, but they haven't really had a whole lot of tough games in SEC play. In fact, Texas A&M played them close. That's not a really good team. Auburn had them there for moments of the game, but Ole Miss was able to pull away from that one. And in the only other game that Ole Miss played well, on the road in Death Valley, they got blown out by LSU. And then they have another loss on that schedule there as well. Kentucky played them close. The other loss being to Alabama this past week, which again, no harm in that. Ole Miss was in that game for most of it. They fought, they competed, just weren't able to come out with a win. So I did punish them a little bit just for the sake of the loss. Now out of the SEC championship race, as that has already been clinched, and out of the college football playoff race there as well. But I like the way that Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss is playing right now. Definitely could still be a team that can sneak their way into a New Year's 6 bowl game. This might surprise some people, but I have Washington up here at number 14. That's a whole 9-spot jump from where they were last week. Listen, I know Washington did not come out with a win against the Oregon Ducks. But I'm telling you guys, when Washington is playing at full speed, oh man, or not full speed, I should say, when they have that kill switch on, whoa boy, I know I reference the kill switch a lot, but pretty much when a team goes beast mode, right? When Washington goes beast mode, Michael Penix is one of the best quarterbacks in the entire nation. Those playmakers on the defensive end really step up and know how to take it to the opposing offense. Penix has a lot of weapons out there that he can work with, running the ball, throwing the ball. But again, like I just mentioned, the defense can really turn it on. It helped win them the game last week against the Oregon Ducks. And when Washington is playing at 100%, that's going to be a really hard team to beat. I like the way that Washington's playing. Could be a team that can sneak their way into a New Year's Six bowl game as well if they keep winning. They do have the Apple Cup with Washington State coming up. That'll be an interesting one. But otherwise, here for Washington, I like the way that this team is playing football right now. So Washington, I have there at 14. 13 I have is North Carolina. Now, I'm not going to dwell too long on North Carolina, but look, all I got to say is that this team can be scary down the stretch here. This team is going to be scary for someone to go and play. And that someone is going to be Clemson, right? North Carolina, Clemson, I believe, is your ACC championship game. And look, Clemson's got as much of a path to the playoff as anybody. I know people out there are saying, I'll probably end up saying this again once I get to Clemson, but people out there are saying that, the ACC and therefore Clemson's path to the playoff is done. Watch out for North Carolina. If they get the right chaos scenario, North Carolina is a good enough team to be able to come out on top and be able to beat a team like the Clemson Tigers. So watch out for the Tar Heels. Drake May is a real playmaker, and that defense has gotten better and better as the year has gone along. Penn State is right here at number 12. Excuse me, my apologies. Look, quite frankly, Penn State's played some really good football this year, and their only two losses are to Michigan and Ohio State. Two teams right now that I think pretty much everybody has in their top three, at very least in their top five. So Penn State playing really well. They have found that running groove. Their defense has been playing solidly at times. They actually just shut out Maryland this past week, which bodes well if you are a fan of the Scarlet and Gray, as they have to play them next week on the road. But look, Penn State playing good football right now, got them at 12. And Oregon is here at 11. I've seen people punish Oregon more, but look, Washington just played a really, really good game, right? No discredit to what Washington did, but when Oregon is playing well, look, that's a really hard team to beat, and they've proven that for most of this year. Besides that first game against Georgia, this is an Oregon team that has really been able to pour it on, especially offensively, and with a quarterback that probably had his chance shot, but he's playing like a Heisman contender right now, and that is Auburn transfer Bo Nix. He's been playing really, really well. You have some other guys there that have been playing exceptionally well for the Oregon Ducks at the skills corps position, and around the defense as well. I don't punish Oregon as much because, again, you see how high I have Washington ranked now. I think Washington's a really, really good team. And then you have Oregon down there. Still could definitely make a run to the Pac-12 championship game, and still very well may get there. But there are some tough games coming up for Oregon here on the schedule. You got Utah and Oregon State. Two teams ranked in my top 25 and in the committee's top 25 there as well. We'll look at the committee poll later in this video, but again, it's a really important couple weeks here for the Pac-12, and especially for a team that we see in my top 10, and we'll get there when we get there. But Alabama, welcome back into the top 10. I know it's been rough sledding for fans of the Crimson Tide up to this point this year, but again, have no fear. Bama probably not going to be able to get into the college football playoff. But I do like the way that Alabama has been playing as of late. They've shown fight, they've shown grit, and they've shown stuff that maybe just hasn't been there over some of their losses, right? And you can't discredit Bama too much because, look, Bama has losses. Bama has 2 losses on the road in 2 of the most hostile environments in all of college football, and they're by a combined 4 points, right? That's to Tennessee and LSU, teams who most people have in their top 6. So no discredit to Alabama at all. This is still worthy of being a top 10 team. They've just had some very close calls and unfortunately have come out on the losing end of a couple of those. Now, I'm going to say what I said about Clemson a little bit ago when talking about North Carolina, but there is no way that Clemson has no shot at making the college football playoff. I know I worded that bad. Let me rephrase. Clemson still has a path to the college football playoff. I've seen people like Paul Feinbaum and some other people, talking to you, Paul, saying that Clemson has no shot to get back to the college football playoff, which I think is just an untrue statement. If you look at the teams that are ahead of them right now, at least on my poll, well, the committee has Alabama ahead of them. I'll talk about that here in a bit. Alabama doesn't have a shot to get into the playoff. USC, who I have at number 8. Look, USC is a team that has a loss to Utah, who I have at 7. You guys know my thoughts on the Utes. But USC does not really have any notable wins. Now, they have a chance to get some here this next week, or over these next couple of weeks, I should say, when they play UCLA this week and Notre Dame next week. That's a chance for USC to get some really notable wins. But again, the only notable team they've played in Utah, they ended up losing that game. So if USC loses, Clemson jumps above. Clemson could easily jump back above Utah if Utah were to lose this game to Oregon. And then Utah has a game there at the end of the season as well that they can't afford to drop either. LSU up here at number 6. Their path to the playoff is seeable. It's very foreseeable. I see it as unlikely, but it still is a possibility that LSU could be our first ever 2-loss team in the college football playoff. So rounding that all back to Clemson, right? Clemson still absolutely has a shot. Look, they got Miami and South Carolina left on their schedule. 2 very winnable games for this team. And then they have a shot to boost their resume with a really tough North Carolina team. And I don't think that game is going to be easy for Clemson in Charlotte in the ACC championship game. But a path to the playoff is nowhere near gone for the Clemson Tigers. I could easily see a lot of scenarios where Clemson plays their way back into the top 4. Just my opinion and what I think. I know some people are going to throw out their own opinions. But I believe that Clemson's path to the playoff is 100% viable. And I think it's blasphemy that people are talking about how Clemson has no shot to get into the college football playoff. There absolutely is a shot. Are some things going to have to go right for Clemson? Yeah, probably. They're going to need some help from some teams above them. But for the most part, Clemson controls their own destiny. If you win out and you win, it's going to be it's going to be really tough to keep out a 12-1 Clemson who has such a historic past and are conference champions over a really good North Carolina team that the committee has shown respect for. So just to recap my thoughts on the other teams that are above them, USC, again, has no really notable wins. We know how good the offense is. The defense has had some question marks, but there are some chances for USC to get some really quality wins over this next couple of weeks with UCLA this week on the road, and then you play Notre Dame there as well. So 2 really good teams that I have in my top 20 playing USC. Again, their only losses to Utah, team above them at number 7. You guys know how much I like the Utes. When the Utes are playing at full speed, I think that is one of the best football teams in America right now. I don't think Utah has a viable path to the college football playoff. It's just not going to happen. But a path back to the Pac-12 championship game, still very much there. Again, they lost to Florida first game of the year, and then I believe that other loss, UCLA ended up being that other loss for them there as well. So we'll see what Utah and USC end up doing. Utah's got a big game against Oregon this next week, so look forward to those games. Those are going to be a lot of fun. And then LSU, path to the playoff is absolutely viable, but again, with 2 losses, might be a little bit tricky. In fact, I think it's a really interesting conversation is if you have, let's say, Georgia wins out, Ohio State wins out, or no, actually, my apologies. Let me back up. Let's say, for favorite's sake, Ohio State wins out, TCU wins out, and then LSU beats Georgia in the national championship game. So you're leaving Georgia there with 1 loss. You have a 2-loss conference champion in LSU, and then we'll say Tennessee wins out. That's 11-1. What 2 SEC teams do you take? I think that'd be a very interesting conversation to have. If it did end up coming down to teams like LSU v. Georgia or LSU v. Tennessee, or some scenarios like that. I do think LSU is going to need a little bit of help, but the path to the playoff is most certainly viable. And as we move into the top 5, really should be no surprise, and I'm not going to dwell on this slide too long, but nothing has changed. You still have Tennessee sitting down there at 9-1. They're in a very good spot to end up getting into the college football playoff, and then your 4 undefeated teams are left. TCU here at number 4, they've done tremendous job in their body of work. Still have some question marks about that team, but look, TCU went out and won a defensive game this past week. A defensive game when TCU has been really letting their offense do the work and then letting their defense come up with big stops late. TCU's defense was coming up with big stop after big stop after big stop, and their offense did just enough to help them pull out that game. So I'm loving the way that TCU is able to show their adaptability and being able to win in different situations. That's going to help them a lot when they have to go up against one of the teams ahead of them. But when you look at it here, Michigan here at number 3, I like the way that Michigan has been playing. The only thing with Michigan is if they end up dropping that game to the team ranked ahead of them right there, the Ohio State Buckeyes at number 2. If Michigan does end up dropping that game in Columbus, they're going to sit 11-1, not being able to go to a conference championship game, don't have a division title. They're going to be in a much similar position than Tennessee, and I would take Tennessee over Michigan. Michigan's non-conference schedule is really going to hurt them if we end up having a scenario like that where, let's say, TCU ends up dropping some games there as well. A team like Clemson doesn't end up winning the ACC. The Pac-12 blows itself up more than it did last week. So there's a really interesting debate there as well. Who would you take, Michigan or Tennessee? That's another one to have. Ohio State here at number 2. The Buckeyes had a couple weeks where they struggled, and they went through that narrative of they can't play in the elements. Well, they showed last week that they can. While it was snowing, they had a couple really nice passes. They're able to blow out Indiana. And again, this right here with these two teams, it's going to work itself out. November 26th, it's going to be a hell of a game. And I don't use that word often, but it's going to be a hell of a game. Michigan and Ohio State, November 26th. Michigan has got Illinois this week. Ohio State has got Maryland. Probably going to end up winning both of those games, and they will be undefeated that next week. And then Georgia here at number 1. What more do you want me to say about the defending national champions? They're playing some of the best football out of anyone in the entire nation. And their path to the playoff may very well be a lock if they're able to win out here. They do have to go on the road to play in Lexington this upcoming week. Went a little long on my top 25, so I'm going to run through the committee poll here pretty quickly. Got a little bit of a fancier graphic that I found. I'm liking this one a whole lot better. Here are the college football playoff rankings as of November 15th, 2022. Again, some things I just flat don't agree with at all. Again, I'm higher on Utah than most, so I'm okay with Utah being at 10. Alabama being above Clemson. I understand that Bama, again, their only 2 losses are to Tennessee and LSU, teams that are 5 and 6. But again, Alabama don't really have a shot to the playoff. Clemson does. I feel like Clemson and Alabama should be flipped. Again, it may not matter down the line, but right now, flip 8 and 9. And let's see, just quickly scanning over this one more time. I quite like the rest of this poll here. Again, they have Kansas State quite a bit higher than I do, which again is justified. But you heard my reasoning here in this video. The only thing that I can't get behind with this poll is why NC State is still ranked. I don't quite get why NC State is still ranked, but clearly the committee is seeing something that I am not. So again, I have all the same teams, just replace Coastal Carolina with NC State, mix up the order a little bit, and you have yourself a pretty similar poll to what I put out today for you guys. So I'll let you guys look at this while I outro the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Really do anything you can to help support the channel. We're really close to 750 subscribers if we're not there already. Haven't checked those numbers in a little bit. Probably do that after this video goes live, actually. But thank you guys again so much. And remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.